Hey, everybody, it's Doug Green, and I'm the publisher of Technology Reseller News. And I'm very pleased to have with me Matt Bramson of Frontline. Matt, thank you for joining me today.
Thanks, Doug. It's my pleasure.
So we're here wrapping up I think really what amounts to being the very first vCon conference.
Yeah.
Very historic, a very interesting meeting of minds and so on. And, something interesting has happened at this conference. Usually at a technology conference, there's discussions of products, services, and someone has an invention, and then someone tells me they're doing something they don't want the audience to know about it just yet, but
Yep.
maybe a teaser. But I've been hearing more than once about consequences and issues that go way beyond just the usual rollout of technology, up to basically a civilization transforming thing.
Yeah.
And what do you think? Is that actually what we're looking at here with vCon?
I think we could be, Doug. I think that when you put the kind of the key ingredients of vCons, on the table, so to speak, you're doing two or three remarkable things. You are setting up the ability to capture all sorts of conversations on the phone, with groups, with individuals, conversations over text messages, emails, all these conversations that are happening between us as individuals, in business environments, in personal environments, over all sorts of mediums and tools. So that's one component. Second component is that you're storing all those conversations. And thirdly, the vCon part, you're storing them in a consistent and standardized format that is got a lot of capabilities as far as securing those conversations and appending those conversations, all sorts of things like the sentiment of the callers or other characteristics of the callers you might be bringing in from CRM or from other data sources that know things about these callers. And then the last ingredient is the ability to interrogate that body of conversations with an AI. And so what it leads me to think about is sort of the ultimate manifestation of that, which is, imagine if you had in place this vCon concept that I just outlined, and you're capturing virtually every conversation that virtually everyone is having everywhere on Earth, and you're storing those conversations, and you're building what you might think of as a mountain of vCons, and you have the ability to interrogate that mountain of vCons and generate all kinds of insights on really on the humanity, and it's the things we talk about, the things we share, the issues we struggle with, the problems we talk about and solve or don't solve, heartbreaks, all that stuff is captured in conversations. That's how we communicate. All those sorts of things, all these things that are at the heart of, or maybe even equate to the meaning of life. And they've always been ephemeral and shared in one-on-one and in small groups. But now, for the first time, they could be permanent, and they could be aggregated and shared and leveraged broadly. And you just think about, I don't know, 10, 20 years from now, billions and billions of conversations, and what the value of those would be to learn things, ask really interesting, provocative questions, and potentially change the world. Could be an asset that is of tremendous impact for humanity. And obviously there's concerns to it too, right? About collecting all that data and who would have access to it, and how could that data be kept sufficiently private, which I think are legitimate and challenging concerns. But what I zero in on is the amazing promise. It's almost like something from a science fiction movie or a comic book about having a level of omniscience that is sort of godlike.
Do you think it will make us more productive, or will it just create? I don't want to say just. or will it actually introduce a whole new way of doing things?
Yeah, I mean, in the near term, I think it's going to be very disruptive. AI, I mean, right?
AI, yeah.
There's a lot of things that AI will do better and faster than we have people doing it now. I think it will put a lot of pressure on us to understand and develop the capabilities that we have that are uniquely human. I think some of us operate in that way a large percentage of the time, but other people not so much. And so I think there's an opportunity for a lot of disruption that could be challenging. But I also think optimistically we could be more fully actualized and kind of unburdened from a lot of things that could be done more efficiently.
When I've interviewed other AI leaders as we pioneer in this field, I've heard comments like, after all, not everybody, for example, has a degree in chemistry, but perhaps AI will allow a person who does not have a background in chemistry to understand chemistry, or maybe even to do things, or possibly as a organization invent things, though not having a chemistry background.
Yeah.
Stuff like that.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think somebody who has an intuition, has an idea, but like you said, doesn't necessarily have all the credentials to or the knowledge to evaluate that idea.
Right.
That could be a gate right now that they can't get through. Access to an AI that they could have a conversation with about their idea, have it validated by an expert that's very accessible and close to free, could allow them to take that idea much further than they could today. And I think that's the type of possibility that I think is very exciting.
I want to bring listeners into, or watchers into, what we just did today. Today was Interop Day at vCon. We literally just had lunch. I heard some very interesting things at lunch. I don't want to expose all the things I heard, but two of the things I heard you talk about the interface of philosophy and technology. But I also heard about company that basically takes some water and some sugar and so on, and puts it together into a bottle, and they're using AI. And here comes the issue of morality and law and privacy and so on. So I wonder if you wouldn't comment. Let's start with the philosophy start.
Sure.
Yeah, you actually have a background in philosophy.
Yeah.
Yet here you are running a tech company.
I have a degree in philosophy. I've had to endure a lot of raised eyebrows and skepticism when I told people that I was a philosophy major. But I'll tell you, I was in a session actually down the hall from you in Enterprise Connect, where my 19-year-old self has never felt so vindicated for choosing philosophy. It's a room full of people talking about AI hallucinations, and what they were talking about without knowing it was what I understood to be epistemology and metaphysics. And there's a millennia of great thinkers on the topic of hallucinations and the nature of reality and perception. And I think I've felt like it's coming home to roost, all that knowledge. I think there is increasingly going to be a lot of demand for people who understand philosophy and morals and ethics. And to touch on what you just mentioned about a company that makes a beverage. I was on a call not too long ago with a AI consultancy that was working with a big beverage company with helping them to optimize the pricing on their website for their products.
Mm-hmm.
And they had apparently figured out some kind of an algorithm so that when individuals came to the website, the pricing that would display would be unique to them and would be designed to optimize the profitability of every customer visit. So the price you would see might be different than the price I would see because of certain characteristics that are different. And I raised my hand in the roundtable thing and I said, who's taught the AI what characteristics are legitimate to use to optimize pricing? And he looked at me, the presenter, like he didn't know where I was leading. And I said, for example, has anybody told the AI that the race of the person visiting the website should never be used for pricing?
Right.
What about their age? What about their gender? Does the AI know that those fields in the database, like RACE, are particularly sensitive and should never be used? And he said no. I said, so who at this company is teaching the AI ethics, business ethics, social ethics? And there's nobody teaching it that. So unless you knew to ask the AI what characteristics of these website visitors did you use, you might never know until it gets discovered by an investigative reporter or somebody that you've alarmingly used something you shouldn't have used to determine what price people pay. Could be illegal, could be immoral.
I was going to say, yeah, I think in most states and federally also, and in most countries, what you're describing probably violates a lot of law.
Yeah, and could be powerfully destructive for a brand,
right?
If they were seen to be pricing to their customers in different ways on those bases.
So you start out with I mean, you're hearing about things such as, and this is possibly AI driven, casinos in Las Vegas using surge pricing to price snacks at the little bodegas that they have. You can run in and get a sandwich or a bag of chips to run up to your room.
Yep.
Apparently, what I've heard is that in some of the casinos now, the price of a bag of potato chips might vary across the day.
Wow.
Depending on when you're walking in. And now you've introduced a new wrinkle, depending on maybe who I am.
Yeah.
Maybe what the card says when it flashes.
Right.
So, and
could be based on your FICO score, or could be based on how much money you spend on restaurants, and therefore what you're likely to be willing to spend on a bag of chips could vary.
Right.
I might be willing to spend a lot less on a bag of chips than you would. Maybe even my BMI score could impact how much I really am probably addicted to this bag of chips.
Yeah, it's very interesting because we'll stay with this example for a moment. We get on an airplane, we all know that there's price discrimination, literally.
Sure.
And then necessarily the word discrimination has been tolerated. It's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just there's an auction that's happened. The airline has basically sold off its tickets.
Yep.
And so on. And but to your point, they've historically sold those tickets according to the law, meaning that they're blind to race, income, zip code.
That's right.
And all these other factors. It's just you've walked in and put a bid down for the ticket.
Yeah.
Now what you're saying is we've opened the door to, because this information is so easily and quickly accessible.
Yep.
There's this potential that, and I guess this is one great example, but there's hundreds of others where abuses could happen, which are illegal and unethical.
Yeah, and could be inadvertent, right?
Right. No one had even thought about it at this organization.
Yeah. Right. Exactly. And nobody at the organization I've referenced before had even thought that anything in a customer record, even a customer record that might have been, might have had a lot of data appended to it from other places, could potentially contain information that would be discriminatory.
Right.
There's ways to discriminate on. There's proxies for things like race to some extent in things like Zip+4s, right? I think these AIs are going to be fed lots of what we've been calling for the last couple of days robot food, from all different sources. People will be feeding it, obviously financial reports, could be feeding it all kinds of consumer data, and you may not know when you're, interacting with this AI, what in addition to what you've supplied it has already been supplied by other people, or that the AI just has access to as a default resource. And so, if you're not having something like a philosophical conversation with this AI about what you consider to be the boundaries of ethical behavior with respect to the task you're giving it, there's a very real possibility that it will that will cross ethical boundaries without knowing it's doing so.
You know, it just, as we wrap up our podcast today, there's two things that occur to me to talk to you about, and that is that one of the things I've been thinking about a lot these days is that we have a stay in your lane culture. So, and that's usually not a bad idea. In other words, to maximize worker efficiency, to be productive, and so on, we keep even our discussions in a very narrow lane.
Yep.
So the people that were behind this pricing scheme at that company basically had a very narrow mission. It wasn't even on their radar to think about how AI could maybe just all on its own start making decisions which probably the organization really doesn't want.
Yeah, that's
and
right.
cause reputational
They were given a
damage
simple
and-
task of
right.
Maximize website profitability by having dynamic pricing based on the characteristics of the user.
So, Matt, are you suggesting to CEOs and CTOs and so on, senior leadership, don't stay in your lane? Think about what you're doing across the board. Charge, when you mission a group of people to do something, maybe have another task force look at what they're doing, not to impede it, but just to.
Yeah. I think there needs to be a reality check. If the pricing model that this company came up with was devised in a room full of people, and somebody raised their hand and said, "Hey, what if we charge people more money based on their race?" The group of people in the room would have shot that idea down in seconds, and everybody would say, "No. Hey, it's a brainstorm, but that's a bad idea."
Right.
I think you need to consider having a process that takes the output of a team that could very likely include an AI, and interrogate that output. Where did this come from? What are the data and characteristics you've used? Is the approach you took congruent with our brand and with obviously applicable laws and ethics? I think otherwise there's a very real possibility that people could be led astray and could make some catastrophic mistakes.
As we wrap up our podcast, I want to let you bring in Frontline just a little bit. How are you guys at Frontline helping your clients through all this?
Yeah, well, Frontline is sort of three lines of business really artfully woven together. Number one is we operate a 350-seat call center BPO. So we take all kinds of calls from all types of businesses and their customers. Number two, we're a significant reseller of CCaaS platforms like NICE and Zoom and Dialpad and a few others. And number three is we've developed our own agent enablement software that helps our agents and other people's agents deliver the best experience to callers, and it's AI enabled. One of the things we're most proud of, and it came up repeatedly over the last couple of days, is we handle a ton of inbound calls from 211. So people calling for social services, help with their utilities, help with food, help with housing. And what we're really excited about is the opportunity that vCon presents to aggregate all those conversations across all kinds of municipalities, because problems like homelessness are pervasive.
Right.
And what's nice about 211 is it's not a competitive landscape. So whatever works in one municipality, they're happy to share it with other municipalities. And using vCons as a cross-platform format that can allow more people to be helped. With typically the organizations that help folks like that are constantly trying to do more with less. So having an efficient way to collect all these conversations that are being had and try to derive best practices from them is something we're really excited to be a part of.
Matt, I really want to thank you. We could go on all day about this, but I want to continue our conversation. I look forward to our next discussion. But for now, Matt, thank you very much indeed for joining me. Where can we learn more about Frontline?
Frontline.group.
Frontline.group. Everyone go visit it. It's worth it. So thank you very much, Matt, and I'm going to look forward to seeing you the next time.
Thanks, Doug.